The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Leigh, how are you?
I'm great, Ashish. How are you?
Good, good. Your face is turning red because you already know we're going to be talking about you today.
I know. I hope people they don't you don't have to watch the video. You can just listen. That way you won't
No, 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 no. They need to
my
see you blush.
discomfort.
Anybody who's listening to this right now on whatever device you're listening, if you're in your car, well, that's the sole exception. If you're in your car and you can't stream us, you can actually listen on your Sirius XM radio or on your or if you're listening on your whatever podcast out, if it's whatever outlet you have. Uh, I do think it is very important that you all understand that we're going to be talking about powerful women today. And I've known for the longest time, the woman's next to me on the screen here, though my co-host here, Leigh, is one of the most powerful women I've ever met in my entire life. And we're going to talk about her life and we're going to embarrass her. And we're also going to sing her happy birthday because it is her.
Ah,
It was her birthday as of this recording. So we're going to sing her happy birthday. But I want to make sure we talk about this because, when we talk about powerful women, I still can't believe it's such a polarizing figure. It's a polarizing topic rather, and I still can't believe we're there. That we're still not past this, and I'll tell you why I say this. I was in Tanzania when the current president of Tanzania was sworn in. Her predecessor passed away while in office, so she was sworn in. She ended up becoming the first woman president in office, and that got lost. And it was during the pandemic, and she brought the country together in terms of what she did. And I remember last year in October, I was at the World Travel Tourism Council. I was on stage, and the fact that I got to be on the same stage as her, and I won't say I was gushing, but I was honestly. I mean, her politics are not always the right politics. But the fact that she's the first female president, and you know what, she brought a country together that was completely torn apart. And she brought them together. Does she get everything right? Of course not. But the fact that she was there, and I remember on that stage, I was talking about the fact that she had the most difficult task. She had to get on stage. She had to basically tell the country what the shortcomings were of her predecessor, who was the president. She was the vice president, what the shortcomings were of that person. She then had to actually talk to the international community and basically backtrack because they were these people that said, COVID isn't real, this, that, and that's not a political thing, but that's what she was. And she had to backtrack to gain access and to gain inclusion into the international community. She understood the world and she brought the country together in a way that's never before. Go look at Peru. Again, remove the politics. We have a female president, Dina Boluarte, in Peru. Not everybody agrees with her politics, but she stepped in when her predecessor was impeached. This is a country that had 8 presidents in 11 years. And she stepped in when her predecessor was impeached. And, you had people protesting, demanding elections early. She tried giving them that. She brought a country together to understand about politics. Now, they have elections next year. And sure, she didn't solve everything, but she still managed to bring the country together for the sake of tourism. So I look at both of these women, and I will tell you, there is not a man in hell who could have done that job. Not one. I don't care who it is. There's not a man on this earth that could have done the job those two did. Remove the politics. You know why? Because they don't have the guts to do it.
mm.
I'm telling you, they don't. I have, I consider my mother to be one of the strongest women in the world.
Your mom is amazing.
She is. She is. And my father, God rest his soul. My father actually talked a lot about the fact that we wouldn't be here
Mm.
without her. She is the rock behind this company. She's the rock behind the family. I will tell anybody who will listen that my wife, who is also pretty amazing, that
Mhm.
my wife probably saved my life 3 or 4 times, probably
Mhm.
3 times that I can count. I don't know that I'm actually alive without my mother or my wife, and
Wow.
that's important. It's not just the emotional support. It's not just the moral support. There is something within strong women that is just you have to admire. If you can't admire it as a man, it means you're completely insecure in yourself. But you have to admire it because they every time, and I said this to my sister-in-laws, every time we get the feeling that it's impossible, there's this bend, don't break attitude. Yeah, okay. No matter what's thrown at them. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I remember I said this to my sister-in-laws, when they were, whenever they meet a guy, whenever they meet somebody and they're serious, I'll talk to him because I'm the eldest, and I'll talk to him and I say, you are getting involved in a family of very strong women. Each one has their own strength. One is strength in brains, one is strength in grit, one is strength in emotional support, and one is strength in leadership. And each one has something different. And you need to be secure in how strong these women are. And if you're not, then you should probably leave right now. I also enjoy scaring the guys away, but those things. But then that brings me to you, birthday girl. You have had a life that I don't think any man, let alone a lot of women, could have endured. And I am going to put you on the spot because I think we talk about me giving a TED Talk, but I actually think about you giving a TED Talk. I think that it needs to happen. And I want to preface this by this to people who are listening, because I think it's important. It's something that I wasn't able to talk about before because I couldn't get through it, but now I can. We met before the pandemic. We met, I think it was 2017, right around there is when we met, I think. 2017, 2018, right around there.
I feel like even earlier, but
might have been earlier. Might have been
something like
earlier.
that.
It was basically just, doing presentations here and there. But we started to really connect during the pandemic.
100%.
We were both completely at a loss as to what was happening. And to our listeners, I want to tell you, and again, if you're driving your car right now, pull over, crack open YouTube and watch this on YouTube. You need to, because I need you to see our faces. If you're listening on Spotify or on Amazon or on Apple, great, fantastic, keep listening. And if you're driving, like I said, keep driving. But if you're somewhere where you can actually stream this and actually watch us on YouTube, please watch this one episode on YouTube. I think you need to, because I need you to see this woman's face because of that. So we during the pandemic, all of our projects, all these projects that I have that define me, every one of them, these are social projects, every one of them blew up and became basically poverty alleviation projects. And it was killing me inside. And you were with me when I broke.
Yeah.
You were absolutely with me when I broke. That was the first. And you were calm, you were collected, and you said, I remember you said, it's okay. You need to let this out. You've looked after so many people, it's time to look after you. And you had said that, and I thought that was key. Now, there were a few other moments, but the one I'll never, ever, ever forget, and the one that is just ingrained in me, and this was earlier this year. This was in March. We were supposed to record an episode of this podcast. I was in a hotel room. My father was lying in the trauma ICU at the hospital. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, we all thought he was going to get out of it. And it started to hit me that we were in serious trouble. It started to hit me that we were, and I remember we sat there and I was like, okay, we'll do this. And I was kind of scattered. You noticed I was scattered. You noticed I was completely afraid. I had basically been driving, I would drive half hour north, almost an hour north, hour south every day. I'd sit in the ICU with him and I would work from there, talk to him, make decisions for him. I'd look after my mom, everything else while running the business and looking after the family at home and going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I never once stopped to look after me. And I remember I had a hotel room right near the hospital there. And so I was in there. I was like, okay, we're going to record. Let's do it. And you're like, it's okay. We don't have to do this today. And I said, and I remember I said to you, I need to do this today. And I need to do this today. And I need to. And then I just broke.
Yeah.
You were there. So this woman who all of you who are listening, her name is Leigh Strinsky. She is the co-host of this podcast. I need you all to understand just how powerful this woman is. The lowest point, not just me, the lowest point that everybody else, she finds a way to bring people up no matter what's happening with her. So we're going to talk about you because We talk about powerful women, and what comes to mind is people like Indira Nuyen or Margaret Thatcher or anything like that. And that's not necessarily the only definition, right? Being in a position of power doesn't make you powerful.
Hmm.
Giving other people power makes you powerful.
Yeah.
So I would like our listeners who have been growing by leaps and bounds, I would like them to meet you. So why don't we start from the top, Leigh?
Oh
And
my
why
God.
and why don't we start? You were the first woman to do something. You became a widow at a pretty young age,
Hmm.
and you raised two amazing girls. So why don't we
Yeah.
start at the top? Why don't you let's let the world meet you?
Just a Southern girl with big dreams, I don't know. I can remember
Yeah.
I mean, so many people, broken home, all that kind of stuff, and sort of an upbringing that was difficult. But certainly didn't want for anything, at least not physical things,
Mm.
emotionally probably more. But yeah, just I don't know. I was just a good girl who did all the right things through high school and got into college and just imploded. I'm starting to wonder if I have ADHD, honestly. But
No, no, I think
uh,
you know what? If you do, it's probably a blessing because what's the saying? Takes a licking and keeps on ticking.
yeah, maybe
You
so.
know.
Maybe so.
So you went through all of that. You just said that you imploded. What happened?
And now I know because I have two girls. This is so common. At the time, nobody talked about it, but I just had a meltdown in college. I wasn't prepared. I had skated through high school with great grades. I'd gotten into an excellent university that people would, you know, give their right arm to get into. I was there and I was sleeping through class. I was probably depressed. I probably
Mm,
was. But sleeping through class, making bad choices, just didn't have the discipline I needed. I just hadn't been taught that in high school.
mm,
And so I remember my semester year of college, I went to my counselor because I kept changing classes. This university had a requirement for a foreign language to graduate. So I tried French and I'd failed out of that. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do Italian. That's supposed to be easier. So I started on that. And so finally I said Portuguese because football players all took Portuguese. So I thought I'd be okay. Maybe I would get through it because I was like, I don't see a path out of college without a foreign language. I got to figure this out. But anyway, I went to speak with my counselor, my guidance counselor, and you know, got the grim news. It'd probably be best if you left while you can still get back in. So I did, and that sort of and I stayed in Chapel Hill. I was at University of North Carolina, and I stayed in Chapel Hill and worked. And it's funny because one of my first jobs out of when I left there was with this company called Computerland. At that point I thought I wanted to be an electronics technician. So then I enrolled in community college and I was learning all about computer circuits and all that. And like really computers were just in their infancy. We're talking about in the mid 80s.
oh, this is
I
the
got this.
Commodores.
Yes. Yes, and we would build these compact laptops that there were portable computers. They were called portable computers,
Yes, yes.
bigger than today's modern desktop.
Hmm.
And I was putting in chips one by one, like putting in the chips, loading DOS, getting it all up and running, doing all this stuff, hand building computers because that's what you did then.
Oh, you went to the 286s after the Commodore 64s.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to play
Yeah.
on those. That's awesome. Okay.
And yeah, and then I from there moved into and mind you, I was maybe 22 at the time. I moved into their purchasing department. So I was their purchasing agent. So I would be responsible for buying thousands of chips all at once, trying to
At
negotiate.
22.
It's so stupid, Ashish. I was so bad at it. I
Well,
was
hold on a
so
second.
bad
Hold
at
on a second. Hold on a second.
it.
You were 22 and given that responsibility. To
Yeah.
all of our listeners, do you actually see a trend forming right now? Do you notice this? Like, I mean, do you see a trend kind of forming? How many 22-year-olds you know that are in charge of that? I mean, I love my children, but if my son's 22 and he's asking, I'm not putting him in charge of that.
It's crazy. What were they thinking, right? What were they
Well,
thinking?
clearly they saw what we all see now, clearly.
I
So
guess.
okay, so what happened? It was probably disastrous, right?
Oh God. Well, no, I mean, I felt like a caged animal. I would just felt like I was dying inside every day. I couldn't see daylight. I hated it, you
But
know.
did you do the job properly?
Oh yeah, for the most part, I mean, I was a little slow sometimes
Well,
getting
well,
things,
hang on.
but
So at 22, you were purchasing microchips
yeah,
for portable computers and desktops. This is the time of DOS, not even Windows. We weren't even at
right.
Windows 3.1 yet or
Yeah,
3.0. We
correct.
were still at DOS.
DOS with the
So,
Z
which
prompt. Yeah,
surprisingly, some computers in the world are still at DOS. But you were basically at DOS.
yeah.
Okay, so to everybody who's listening who has kids who are millennials or Gen Z, with all my respect, there's no way in hell your kids at 22 are doing that. I'm sorry, but they're not. I know mine wouldn't. I love my kids and they're very smart, but they wouldn't. There's no way in God's green earth that your kids are doing that, as smart as they are. And you did it. What was your fallback? If that didn't work, what was going to be your fallback?
Oh, I had none. I had none, but I'll tell you what I did. I got I got a Christmas bonus from them, and I don't even know how, because I was so irresponsible. I had managed to save $2,000. I was rich. I had $2,000. I quit my job and I just said, my brother was living in Charleston, and I was going to move to Charleston, and I was going to figure it out. I was going to get a job in Charleston. I didn't know what it was going to be, but that's what I was going to do. Me and my, what car did I have at the time? I think I had a 67 Beetle. Me and my car
You
and
had
my
Herbie.
$2,000 drove to Charleston.
You had Herbie.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
It was red. It was so
Oh,
cute.
all right.
And I moved in with my brother, who lived above a wig shop on King Street in downtown Charleston. If you know King Street now, the wig shop doesn't exist anymore. We had to
Mm-hmm.
go down this alley and then we'd go upstairs. It was so roach infested that my brother would sleep with cotton balls in his ears
Oh my God.
at night. And I slept on his couch, and my brother's younger than I am.
Well,
And after,
I want to stop you for 1 second and ask all of our listeners if just think about this for a second, because a lot of our listeners had a tough upbringing. A lot of our listeners that are our age had a really tough upbringing, and they're probably relating to what you're saying right now,
yeah.
right? You and I connected because I had a tough upbringing. You had I mean, God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm learning stuff right now. Um, but I want all of our listeners to think about this, right? This podcast is about big successes in small places. You're listening to a novel unfold right now. This is her TED Talk that's unfolding right now. And to all of our listeners who are around our same age, you probably can relate in certain ways. And I think it's important because when we think about the next generation, the generation after that, we have to ask ourselves if they are prepared with the grit that you had. You had no fallback. You're putting cotton balls in ears to prevent cockroaches from getting in. And you're living basically above a wig shop on a place. I know that street, and
Yeah.
there's no way anybody would be living on that street.
It's nice
So
now, but it wasn't
it's
in the 80s.
it was basically, I mean, we have a lot of musicians that talk about growing up in the ghetto and whatnot. Yeah, that was pretty close to it
It was a little
at
rough.
that time. Yeah. So, all right, go ahead.
Okay. So I kept getting these job interviews and flaking out and not going to them.
Mhm.
And my brother, who's younger, I'd even signed a lease on an apartment. I was going to take my $2,000 and had found an apartment I was going to be moving into as soon as in a month, it was going to be ready for me. My brother one day said to me, okay, it's time for you to get off my couch and you need to do something with your life. I've heard about the Coast Guard. I looked into it to be a Coast Guard reservist to help, because he was enrolled at the College of Charleston. And he said, I've looked into that. Why don't you go down and talk to a recruiter? And I did. So I went down and talked to a recruiter, and probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, I was raising my hand and getting shipped off to Cape May, New Jersey. I was in the Coast Guard.
And you were in the Coast Guard, and where were you staying? What were you doing in the Coast Guard when you first started?
I went to Newport, Oregon. I was at a surf rescue station. So we were just south of the Columbia River, which the
Okay.
60 Minutes just did a piece
Yep,
on it. It was
I
pretty
saw it.
cool.
I saw it. So you,
Yeah,
so you
so
were out. You were in the front line, basically. You were out
yeah,
on the cutters.
yeah.
All right.
But I started out there peeling potatoes and mopping floors and steam cleaning carpet, and then moved up into the radio, where you would man the radios, and that was 24/7. You'd have to man the
Mm.
radios and listen for Mayday calls and things like that. So progressed into that. This all happens pretty quickly, especially at these small stations, because there were only 60 people there. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um
And then,
and then
how many women
oh,
on this ship, by the way? How many women on this
oh,
ship?
well, so it was a shore station. So we were at
Okay.
a shore station. I was so lucky. This was a pivotal moment for me. I hit the jackpot. I was at this surf rescue station. The commanding officer was a man who w believed in women.
Awesome.
They're called detailers are the people that send you places that where you
Hmm.
get your assignments. He called the detailer in Washington, D.C., and he said, send me all the women you can. I will take all of them. And at the time, there was about only 10% of the entire Coast Guard was female. So I think that put it at maybe 40. I don't know.
So listeners, that's stage two of this epic story. Here we are. I mean, stage one was making something in real life. Here we are, stage two. She's basically, basically, what's the phrase? Breaking the glass ceiling.
Well,
Uh,
and yeah, kind of. And there was a woman ahead of me who she
yeah.
had progressed, and so I had a role model.
Mhm.
But he had, you know, been a huge proponent of her, and then he was with me, and
Awesome.
I don't mean in a loving way. I mean like in a tough, like full expectations of me to
Like a
perform.
like a like a father
Very,
figure almost.
yeah. I keep
Yeah.
in touch with him even today, all these years later.
Wow.
He and his
Okay.
wife, and they followed my life and all of that. They're amazing. But
Well, when you talk to them, make sure you tell them I said thank you.
I, he so I got out on the boats, on these rescue boats, and I remember I wasn't even on duty. My first rescue call, I'd been at the station maybe a week, and it was January, and I got a call in the middle of the night. Hey, boot, that's what you're called when you come right out of boot camp. You're called a boot. um so, hey, boot, get up, you're going on a call. And so I got out and into these 20 to 30-foot seas, and because a fishing boat, their windows had blown out. So we were out there, and we were waiting for the seas to die down so we could escort them back into the port. And we were out there for hours. I think I want to say probably 6 or 8 hours. It's called station keeping. So we were just
Hmm. Hmm.
up and down. And I didn't know any better. I was so scared because I had just gotten there, and it was my first time out on a Coast Guard boat ever, and I
Sure.
didn't know what I was doing, and there was all these guys, and I was the only woman. I stayed there with the surfman, the guy who's like the most expert person. I stayed out on deck with him. Most of the guys went down below. They were getting sick, they were struggling. And I had my day with that. Trust me, I did eventually do that. But I was so scared and stupid, and I didn't know how dangerous. I was so ignorant. I didn't
Yeah.
know what kind of danger we
No,
were all in.
no fear.
No fear. I didn't know I needed to be fearful. And
Mhm.
so anyway, we got into port and back. We made it back, and everybody thought I was some kind of rock star. I was just stupid.
But
But they
you
were like, she's
were.
got what it takes. And all I think was, oh, I can't embarrass myself. I don't want to be like a weak girl. I didn't want to be a weak female.
You were trying to prove something.
Yeah, I was. I just
But
was, yeah.
you said this was a pivotal moment in your life. Is it because you felt like you proved your worth?
Oh, 100%. Coast Guard boot camp. And I actually would recommend anybody go to boot camp, even if you didn't want to serve. If there was a way that anybody could just go, that was the most empowering thing for me to,
Yeah.
reach my lowest point and then build myself back up, and physically to be able to do things I didn't think I was capable of doing. And there's just such a confidence building thing. And then after that, like my brain switched on. And at that point, I started realizing that, anything was possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And you were among the first. I remember you were telling me the story with the Coast Guard. Was it the Coast Guard or the expedition ships that you blazed the trail? Which one was it?
Once I left the Coast Guard and started working on the expedition ships, I didn't know it at the time, but fast forward through working for them for a few years, I was given an opportunity to be a captain, and that was
You
so
were the first.
cool to be able to do
So
that. I didn't know at the time I was the first.
okay, so you were the first expedition cruise captain in America,
North America,
in
yeah,
North
yeah,
America. Okay.
yeah.
So let me go back to the Coast Guard for a second. So you're in the radio call. Where did you progress from there? What was the highest position you got in the Coast Guard before you left?
So I was it was a boat driver. It's called being a coxswain. And so I
Mhm.
was driving those boats, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be an admin person. I wanted to be a storekeeper, which is like an admin person, or I
Mhm.
wanted to be a radio man, or
Mhm.
maybe an electronics technician. And this same commanding officer kept making me go on these long boat calls. We would have these, they're called tuna calls, where you would go 100 miles out to pick up a tuna boat. And those would generally take about 24 hours.
Mhm.
And I kept, the CEO kept saying, get to make me go on these things. And the guys just kept saying, you need to be driving boats. You need to be driving boats. You're a
Mhm.
natural. You're a natural.
Mhm.
And they beat me down in a fit of delirium after too many dry ham and cheese sandwiches and salty potato chips with not enough water. I finally said, okay, I don't know,
Okay. All
somewhere
right.
about 40 miles off the coast of Oregon, I gave in and said, all right, I'll do it. So,
So I'm going to ask you a question because I asked this to my sister-in-law as well. Even though you weren't in the water as a lifeguard, you obviously were pivotal in saving a lot of people's lives
yeah.
out there. Any idea on the number?
Um, actually, life-threatening calls where people were going to die, just a couple, but hundreds and hundreds of towing people back in,
Mhm.
and assisting people who were
When
struggling.
you
That was,
when you
and
say
that's
a
the thing I
couple,
love about the Coast Guard is they're doing that every day. It's so
yep.
cool.
Well,
It's
so you
really
say a couple, like two or four, couple.
oh, no, maybe four.
Okay, so
Real real
that's
life.
still four more lives than a lot of people get to save,
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty cool, and that's actually really cool.
but that's a
Because
team. That was just part of a team doing
no,
that.
but you were there, and see
Yeah.
what I've admired about you from the beginning, and this is again, we said earlier, right? Powerful women are not people in powerful positions. It's people who are able to give other people power.
Mm.
That's what makes somebody powerful. And you know, yeah, you say it's a team, but look at the people that served with you. I mean, I look at me. I didn't serve you there, but in my darkest moments, where you were the one who was there.
Mm.
You were the one who was there. You look at your daughters. Look
Yeah.
at how successful they're gotten. Your one daughter has enlisted. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, she's an officer in the Air Force. I'm so
there you
proud of
go.
her.
That's not by accident. That's
No.
basically a purpose-driven life, and it's because she watched mom basically kick ass.
Mm.
So, I mean, all right. So now we go to the Coast Guard and we go into what comes after the Coast Guard.
So then, so this is a theme for me. I really never want to work, but there's really a
All
thing for
evidence
me.
is the contrary.
What is the path of least resistance? What is the easiest thing for me to do to make money and
Yeah.
not feel like I'm working? So left the Coast Guard and I was working in a flower shop. My parents were florists, and so that was always my fallback job, was working in a flower shop. And so
Mhm.
I do that, have always done that in between things. And my cousin was working for an expedition company down in Baja, and again, my theme, what can I do that I really don't have to work? She says, I know a cruise line in Seattle looking for, it was now the current Lindblad expeditions. And
Mhm.
they're looking for a deckhand, and so they hired me and I went and worked for them down in Baja. And while I was on board, I guess I must have been like 28 at the time, something like
Wait,
that.
so all this happened from 22 to 28.
Yeah.
Everything happened. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Yeah. I think I was 27 or 20. No, it was probably 28.
Hmm.
The captain on board turned 30. Have I told you this?
Oh,
This, right?
jeez. Okay.
The captain on board, he turned 30. He turned 30 and they celebrated his birthday while I was on board. And I was like, son of a bitch, he's 30 years old and he's a captain. And I love him. He's not with us anymore, but
For the record, I think this is the first time I've heard her cuss since we started recording. I just want to make sure I said that. But all right, keep going. Keep going. That's awesome.
But I was like, he's 30 and he's a captain. And I started looking at my sea time and how much experience I had and started really looking into what was it going to take for
you
me
probably
to get
had
my captain's
way
license.
more, didn't you? You had way more, didn't you?
I had enough, yeah. And so I was like, that's it. When my tour is done, I am committing myself to getting my captain's license. And so I left after my 6-month tour, and I devoted about 8 months. It took me about 8 months because I was doing it on my own because I was still broke. And I got my captain's license, and I called and Lindblad didn't have anything at that point, but they turned me on to this other company, and they said they're new, they're actively buying boats. This would be a good company for you. And again, put in the path of a man who believed in women.
Awesome.
And he hired me, and he fought for me, and not just me, a lot of women. And he is still Dan Blanchard with Uncruise. He is still in business, and he has entire boats that are staffed at the top by women. His daughter is a captain. He is absolutely amazing. And
we need to get him on this podcast.
He's unbelievable. He's an exceptional human.
All right, so Miss Leigh, the birthday girl, we got to get him on this podcast. That's your task. All right, so that's your task after we're done today.
All right.
All right, so.
But yeah, so it was Dan, and this is the thing all along. I've never felt like I had to prove anything to anybody. I've never felt, there have been a couple of times. I had one captain who was a jerk and I've had some struggles in the Coast Guard with things that did not go well. But
what's the phrase? You can't fix stupid.
You can't fix stupid. I got vindication with my Coast Guard situation because that was a sexual harassment situation. Was able to he got kicked out, and back in the 80s that was a big deal. But anyway, so mostly I just haven't had to fight to prove myself. I've just been fortunate to be with men, and this is why you are important, because it's men who have an open mind to just see skill and nurture that. That's all that we need. That's all anybody.
Well, I mean, and the acknowledgement that women are smarter. Inherently. I'm sorry. Inherently, they are. I will say that to my dying breath. Women are smarter. They really are. I want any man to try to endure childbirth. Just try enduring childbirth and see if you don't break.
Yeah.
So I told my son this story yesterday, 2 days ago, actually. So he and my wife were squabbling about something, and she's having withdrawal symptoms because he's leaving, right? He's going to be going away to college. So
that's real. Yeah.
Yeah, but she won't say it. So she'll sit there and she'll, poke and prod, and she'll just be playful with him. And he was getting just annoyed, and he was basically smack him on his bum every now and then, and she's like, stop it. And he just starts losing his cool. Yeah. And so he's having dinner and he's all acting all high and mighty and just like, I didn't do anything, and puffing out his chest. So I just stopped and I go, you let me know when you're ready to listen, because you're as blind as a bat. He goes, what do you mean? I said, look, I've known her longer than I've known you. However, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what she's doing. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to tell you when you're calm, because if I tell you now, it's going to go over your head. If I tell you when you're calm, you'll actually understand. You're probably going to feel like dirt when I tell you, but then you're going to actually understand. So he calmed down, and I explained to him, I said, when you were born, I said, you were in the NICU for 3 days because you were underweight. They put you in the NICU for 3 days. I said, you were born by cesarean because you never turned. You were breached. Your head was always at the top. And 2 days before you were born, the cord went around your neck. So which is why we had to take you out. I said, your mother, who had an incision across her stomach and refused morphine, within 24 hours, risked popping her sutures to get out of bed and basically will herself over the NICU just so she can get to you because she didn't get to hold you when you were first born because she was basically under anesthesia. She didn't get to hold you. She willed herself, was willing to pop all of her sutures on that incision just to get to you because she thought you weren't well. Because she heard you weren't keeping down food. And I said, that's your mom. I said, why do you think she's playing around with you? She goes, what do you mean? I said, she's gonna miss you a lot. She's having trouble with the idea that she's in. He broke down in tears. I said, told you you're gonna feel like dirt.
You're making me cry.
Oh, sorry. Mission accomplished. So he went in and my wife came to me and she goes, what did you say to him? I said, why? She goes, he was crying like a baby. We're talking like ugly crying, snot balls and all. And I explained to her and I said, it doesn't take a genius to see it. And I just reminded him what you did for him. I reminded him what you did for him and the fact that you're doing these things. And she goes, no, I just like hit him with the bum. I go, don't ruin the moment. don't ruin the moment. But you think about this. This is why this episode had to be you.
Mm.
Now I'm gonna bring up a painful subject, but and I talked to you about it before, so you share as much as you want to share. But I think everybody here has to know this. You became a widow pretty young in life. How old were you when that happened?
I think I was 48.
And how old were your daughters?
They were 10 and 11.
So
11. I must have been closer to 50. No, I guess it was 48. Yeah, because
48.
Yeah, 48, 49, something like that.
It was, and I'll apologize in advance for painful details. Was it sudden?
It's okay.
Was it sudden or was it drawn out?
No. He was sick for years, and he knew that his number was going to come up, and it was just kind of a slow. He had hepatitis C, and never he didn't fit the profile, so we don't really know how he ever contracted it. But unfortunately, he was about 1 to 2 years. He died 1 to 2 years before these drugs have come into being that now would have probably kept him alive. But yeah, so it was really slow because he had that diagnosis for about 8 years. And about 6 of those years, he was okay. The last 2 were really, really hard.
Rough.
Yeah, really hard. So
one of the things I admire about you is, and this is again, I restate, powerful women aren't powerful because of powerful positions. They're powerful because they give other people power. Your world obviously shattered at that point. You may have been, I don't even say prepared, but you knew it was coming. I don't know that we're ever prepared for it. But your children were definitely, it was probably difficult for them, for your daughters.
Yeah, it was difficult for them. I was so fortunate. We found a program about the last year of his life. There was a program, and I wish these were in I've often thought this might be my next thing that I take on. There was this program through the Children's Hospital in Tacoma, Washington. It's a 2-part program, and it was called Discoveries and then Bridges. And Discoveries was for kids and families who had a loved one with a terminal condition. Might not be that it was going to end in death. It could be, a long-term, like we had a kid in there whose sibling had cystic fibrosis. But anyway, group stuff. And we would meet once a month, and we would gather into groups, and we would do like a potluck. And so I had this whole community for that whole year trying to prepare my kids. And they were very resistant to that because they didn't want people to treat them any differently. They didn't want people to know that they had a sick dad. They didn't want to be that kid at school. They didn't want the pity. And then when he died, we transitioned into their Bridges program, which was unbelievable. And that program, we met twice a month. And sadly, we transitioned into that program with some of the same people we'd been in the other program with. But, that was also a blessing. But that was a great support. And but now he died in 2013. So it's been 11 years. But my kids are still processing that. You can't, and I'm sure anyone who's lost someone, and I'm sure it will be years and years and years of evolving and living with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And yet you raised two amazing daughters who are taking the world taking the world by storm. I mean, and this is what I mean. You empowered your daughters. You gave them power. You said something just in that one that you didn't want your daughters didn't want to be those kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the world feels sorry for them. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be those kids. That's a trait they learned from mom.
Mm.
That
That's a
that
healthy trait or not,
It's a very healthy trait. It is, I will tell my kids all the time the world doesn't owe you anything. It's what you're willing to work for and what you're willing to struggle for and what you're willing to basically, walk on rocks for. How bad do you want it, right? The world doesn't owe you anything. And this level of entitlement that we see in society showing up, and we see it now with new generations, and not all, but this era of just, where the world seems to have to owe somebody something just is not reality. And so why I brought that up, was because of the fact that you've got a daughter who's enlisted in the Air Force who is purpose driven like you are. You've got another one who is about to take the world by storm. She's in university right now, and she's
Yeah.
basically, going to do some amazing things. The path could have gone very differently, very easily. I'm sure there were times where it felt like you were on the side of a cliff, trying to just basically keep all the wheels on the road when two were already off. And a lot of us have been there, right? I mean, I felt that way, but not like you.
Mm.
And I think that says something. And the fact that you're willing to give that power, that your kids have that power, they're going to impart that power to other people as well. And that's what powerful women are about, right? It's not about just what you achieve. It's about what the people who come after you achieve, and the people after them, and the people after them, and the people after them. If we want to talk about change, right? I mean, I every time I hear a politician talk about, women's voting rights and suffrage and whatnot, I'll stop and say, you know how long ago that was? Are we still talking about this? You know how long ago that was? It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense why we're still having that conversation and still think that it's like planting a tree 50 years ago. The tree blooms and you ski, and then after it's bloomed for 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 years, all you talk about is planting that tree. And yeah, and what else? Yeah, and what else?
Do you know though, I didn't realize that women really weren't able to have their own bank accounts and get loans and things like that until like the late 70s, which that was, I mean, I really benefited from that. I bought my first place, my condo, when I was like 29, and I was so proud of myself, but I didn't think anything of it. Like I
Mhm.
didn't realize that really only, it had been less than 10 years that women were able to get a loan without a cosigner. It didn't occur.
Yeah. It's not been that long. I mean, and a lot of it's because a lot of women don't have credit, right?
Yeah.
They don't have credit. Everything is in the spouse's name or whatnot. And that's the other part of it. I mean, so I had this conversation with my daughter. I was talking to her about this after I said, look, your brother's going to be leaving the house. I said, our relationship is going to change. She was
Mhm.
doing her homework. And I don't know where I asked her this question. I think I told you this. I said, do you think you're not as smart as he is?
Mm.
Came out of nowhere. I don't know why I asked it. And I don't know what I was expecting. And she said, yeah, last year. I said, who told you you're not as smart as he is? She goes, well, nobody. I said, I've never said it, but who made you think that? Well, I just thought that I'm not going to be as smart as he is because look at all the things he's doing. I looked at him and I said, he's had some amazing teachers, as he's gone up, and teachers that have shaped his life, that have just been the names I'll never forget, and names that I've implored him to never forget, because they're the people that lifted him up, and he can't walk on their backs. He has to lift them up with him to make sure that they see the light the way he sees it. And so I was telling her, and I said, "You've had good luck, but that transitional year that he had in school that just catapulted him, you didn't have that because the teacher you had, while she was a great teacher, halfway through the year she was dismissed from her job. You had to change teachers." And I looked at her and I said, "You have to teach yourself how to study. And yet here you are, and you figured it out." I said, "So in actuality, you're actually smarter than all of us. The only person who doesn't see it is you." And I stopped her and I said, nobody should ever tell you that you're not as good or less than. And this is, coming from me, right? Everybody's told me my whole life that I'm not worth much. So it was with a lot of conviction that I told her that nobody should ever say that to you. And if they do, find a way to run over them. Don't just go and show them, run over them. If it's a brick wall, don't climb the wall, find a way to run through it. And I would tell her with conviction. And listening to you, this is the definition of women who are powerful. When you talked about, like, okay, how long is it going to take to get a captain's license? How long is it going to take for this? There was nothing that anybody could have done that could have thrown you off that chart or off that course to get your captain's license. You talk about when you were raising your daughters as a single mom, you probably had the world thrown at you and the kitchen sink on top of that. And I'm pretty sure nothing ever broke you. It may have felt like it, but I'm pretty sure that on the outside, everybody you talked to was probably silently amazed that you still held it together.
Well, I didn't feel I had an option,
Well, that's it. Just like you said when you first started that first job, that when you were as the purchasing for the chips, there was no safety net.
Yeah.
There was nothing there. There was nothing there. If it didn't work, then you're always starting over again. And that no fear approach is how we're supposed to live life. It's not about basically, I'm not talking about playing poker and risking everything, putting all your chips in the middle. I'm not talking about that. The no fear approach, that we remain curious, and that we remain driven, and that we go after things we believe in, and we don't let fear stop us, right? The unknown. What if this happens? What if that happens? I mean, I'm not talking about jumping off a cliff, but what if this happens? What if that happens? All those things that you said, you weren't taught fear yet, right? You didn't learn what the feel. And I think that everything you've said so far and about your life, what makes it so powerful is the fact that all of it felt with either not having fear or the fact that fear wasn't an option. You didn't have a choice. Your purpose to your daughters, your purpose to your service, your purpose to your career, all of it was put first. All of it was put at the front. And there was nothing or nobody who was going to throw you off of that chart. They weren't going to move you up. You were, at that point, you were an immovable object. They weren't going to move you off of that. And I think that's powerful in its own right. And I think if there's, as our listeners, and again, thank you for all of our listeners for listening. Our viewership has been growing leaps and bounds by, single, double, triple digits. It's been, every month as the number gets bigger, and it's fantastic. So if you take away anything from today's episode, it's that we need to find a way to live our life without fear, right? We control actions, and we control our attitude. And sometimes we don't have an option. We have to control them. And sometimes we have a choice as to what we control. But that's really it. We don't control very much in our life, but we can control how much power we give other people. We can control how powerful we make other people. And that's through how we act, what we say, and how we see the world, and doing things the way we do it. And you have exuded that your whole life. And I needed to make sure you knew that not only is it an honor to have you as a co-host here, but just listening to your story. I've heard a lot of this story, but my jaw's still on the floor. So
well,
it's
thank you.
It's really cool. So when's your book coming out?
Oh, no book.
When's the TED Talk? I got the nomination form here. You sent it to me. I think I'm nominating you. I got you. So we're doing the
I'm
episode.
telling you, this is why I think I have ADHD. I can't finish a book. I can listen to book. I love audiobooks, but God, trying to sit down long enough to read a book, it's painful for me. So
A TED Talk's a 20-minute speech. You can do it. It's 20 minutes.
well,
I'm
thank
nominating you.
No,
We'll
you're
do
the
it together. We'll do it together. We'll do it
one.
together. We'll do. I'll be, I'll be the one basically shining the spotlight on you. Like, all right, watch this. I think it's important. So I wanted to tell you that my daughter is 12, and I think it's important. And I'm not saying, and I would say this to you even if we were off air. I hope that at 18, at 25, at 35, at 55, she has half the strength you have. If she has, then I've done my job as a father.
She will, because you have, and your wife, both of you are lifting her up and making her, believe that anything's possible. That's all. That's all any of us need, is just to be lifted up and seen.
We're holding her accountable when she doesn't do her best, and that's a big part of it. And she's striving now, and she's excelling now and succeeding now, and the world needs more women like you, Leigh. It does. It needs more women like you, because I think somewhere along the lines we forgot. Somewhere along the way we forgot. We seem to associate. I see all these masterclass sessions that show up, and it's about all the women that they present forward. Well, admirable, right? Indira Nuyen, as the former CEO of Pepsi, transformed that company, and her story is, for example, one that is absolutely remarkable when you hear where she came from and what she achieved. Absolutely amazing, absolutely incredible. There are. For everyone who's that, there are women who feel, and not just women, men as well, who feel entitled, that because of the people who came before them, that charted that trail, men and women, that somehow it's not their responsibility to keep charting a path forward. And so I would say, your job as a mother to your daughters, my job, my wife's job as parents to our kids, it's to make sure that our children are not entitled. They don't feel entitled, that they understand that the path we forged for them through struggle, hard work, blood, sweat, tears, that's their responsibility to forge that as well. And this is important because most of them haven't seen the hardship that we've seen, right? And your daughters saw you struggle, but they didn't face what you faced. But yet they understand where you came from. So this episode and part 2 that's going to be coming up is going to be about celebrating powerful women and making sure we understand that as parents, as leaders, as community leaders, as industry leaders, we have one job. And it's not to grow our companies and become part of the Inc. 5000, although that's nice. It's to make sure that the people who are behind us, whether it's our kids, whether it's our coworkers, whether it's somebody you're grooming, mentoring, that they understand that skills is one thing, but the ability to have to the intensity of grit, right? Having the grit and having the guts to actually see failure right in the face and say, not today. Not today. I don't have an option.
Or to thank it and realize that there's something better around the corner.
Absolutely. Or to thank it and say, I've learned a lesson. Thank you for teaching me.
Yeah.
That was absolutely right. So with that, Leigh, I'm going to let you close out the show today.
All right. Well, thank you, Ashish. It's very difficult for me to be in the spotlight. So thank you for guiding me, as you always do, along the gently guiding me along the path. So it's a pleasure, and I love everything that we do together, and I hope that everybody listening got something out of today, and that you'll just take a moment to lift up somebody else and let them know that they matter, and that they can do hard things, and that they've got it in them. So that's it.
Well said. Till next time. Take care, everybody.